Okay, so classification. Classification is just a way of grouping organisms into similar piles, so to speak, or grouping them together based on common characteristics. Okay, and there are two main ways of classifying organisms. There's this three-domain system, which uses molecular data to classify organisms in distinct groups. Okay, the other system is the five kingdom system. We'll talk a little bit about three domain now. I believe most people are familiar with the five kingdom system. Okay, so the three domain system is using, as I said, molecular data. So they're looking at similarities in RNA sequences or proteins that are produced to group organisms into like categories. Okay, so in this system, there are three categories. There's the bacteria, also known as the eubacteria or the true bacteria. There's the archaea, which is also archaeobacteria. These are called the extremophiles because they're typically found in extreme environments. So very salty environments, very hot environments like hydrothermal vents in the ocean or the hot springs out in Yellowstone. So when you see those hot springs with the bright orange and the bright green, a lot of that coloration is due to the populations of the archaea that are living there. And then there's the eukarya, which are all the eukaryotes. Okay, so in the three domain system, the bacteria, archaea, which are all bacterial or prokaryotic cells, are split into two groups, and then you have the eukarya. So in this phylogeny, which group is most closely related to the eukarya? Okay, so when you look, you can see that the archaea and eukarya share a common branch point, indicating they're more closely related to each other than they are to the bacteria. Okay, I'm going to skip this slide for a second and go to the five kingdom, then we'll go back to that slide. Okay, in the five kingdom system, there are five groupings of organisms based on similar characteristics. Okay, so there's the Monera, Protista, Plantae, fungi, and animalia. Those are the five kingdoms. Okay, so we, in this type of phylogeny, are more closely related or most closely related to the fungi. Okay, we share a common ancestor, common branch point right here. Okay, so again, the construction of the phylogeny is dependent on the characters that the person creating it feel are most important. So they can vary. For our purposes, we're going to stick with the five kingdom system. Okay. In the five kingdom system, we further subclassify or break things into smaller groups and give them a taxonomic categorization. And that's what these names are: phylum, subphylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Okay, for the rest of the class, when we start talking about the animals, that's going to be the kingdom Animalia. We're going to look at phylum, in two instances, a subphylum, and then class. So we're going to group things down to the level of class, but I do want you to know that these other groupings, these taxonomic categories are used. Okay, so naming organisms. There's a lot of different organisms out there. How do you come up with names for them? Linnaeus, who was a botanist, is credited with coming up with the system for naming organisms, and that system is called the binomial nomenclature. Okay, it's called binomial because each living thing that's distinct has two parts to its name. Okay, bi, two, nomial, name. Okay, and the language we use for giving names to living things is Latin. So why Latin? Okay, Latin is a dead language. It will never change. No words are added to Latin, no words are taken away from Latin. In modern languages, Romantic languages, things like Spanish, Italian, Chinese, list goes on, words are constantly being added to that language. Okay, so Latin, dead language, never changes. Once you give something a name, That's it. It means that forever. So when we write the names of these organisms, the binomial is made up of those two names. There's the genus and then the species. Okay, when you write it out, it's written in italics or it's underlined. That's how you know that you're talking about a distinct type of organism. Okay, so why don't we just call things the way we see them? You know, why do we have to have this binomial system for naming organisms? Okay, the reason is that common names exist for the same species. It's going to vary depending on where you are. Okay, so around here, the mice that we usually get in our homes or attics or garages or the cellar in October, November, you know, they're kind of that brownish color with the white belly. Okay, they could be one of two things. They could be white-footed mice or deer mice. Okay, so let's say you come up and you're saying that, you know, I was trying to do my zoology work and I saw a mouse run across the floor. And I would ask you, well, you know, what kind of mouse was it? And you'd say, oh, it was a house mouse. And I was like, describe it for me. And then you would describe it, and I'd say, no, based on that description, it's actually a deer mouse. And you would say, well, you know, that's a house mouse. That's what I've always called it. That's what my parents called it. That's what my grandparents called it. So I would say, no, based on what you told me, it's something else. It's a white-footed mouse or a deer mouse. So you've kind of run into a problem where two people are actually talking about the same organism, but they're calling it different things. So when you use that genus species, again, capitalized genus, either in italics or underline, when I say this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, another way to look at it would be mountain lions and cougars. Okay, so down in Florida, okay, the populations of this Felis concolor, which is the genus species, call them panthers, Florida panthers. Okay, so somebody comes up here, let's say they're out at the Quabbin and they see the elusive mountain lion that supposedly don't exist around here. And they say, I was up at the Quabbin, I saw a panther. And I would say, no, well, we don't have panthers around here. They're actually mountain lions. Say, no, it's a panther, I know, because I'm from Florida and this is what they look like. And I'd be like, no, I think it's something else. If you call it this, Felis concolor by its genus species, both people know exactly what you're talking about. So that's why we use that system, for clarity. Okay, so each level of classification, there are distinct characters that separate out those particular species from other kinds of living things. Okay, in this particular example, this is just for demo. I'm not going to ask you the specifics about it. Okay, kingdom Animalia, okay, multicellular heterotrophs that get their food through ingestion. Okay, so in all the animals, and there's a whole bunch of animals we're going to talk about, the next kind of breakdown point is phylum chordata. Okay, one of their characteristics is that they have a notochord. Okay, so let's go back to this slide. And, you know, this isn't really much different from what we do face-to-face lecture. There's always a glitch somewhere. Okay, so animals with the notochord. Okay, so think about animals. Okay, everything that we call an animal. Okay, let's say you put them all in a big room and you have to start splitting them up into little groups. Okay, so you've got all these things that are animals. So you're going to go through and you're going to look at specific characteristics. Okay, one of them is going to be, does it have a notochord? If it has a notochord at some point in its development, and we're going to talk about what that is, it's kind of like it's not really a precursor to the vertebral column, but it acts as a template for the formation of the vertebral column in most chordates. Okay, so if it has this characteristic, you put it over here in this pile, and then all the other animals are over in this pile. Once you've gone through and sorted them all out, everybody in this pile that has a notochord, at some point, we're going to call them chordates. Okay, in this little pile of chordates, you kind of look through everything that's in there. What animals have a vertebral column? Okay, so you go through this little pile of chordates, you're going to actually, we're going to see later on, you're going to end up with three piles. One of those piles is going to be the vertebrates, and we call that the subphylum Vertebrata. Okay, so each of these taxonomic groupings is just teasing out more and more similar characteristics to each other, but different from the rest of the group. So another way to say it is you're looking at more and more derived characters to separate things out into individual groups. Okay, so that's basically the lecture on classification and taxonomy. Okay, next set of lectures should be available in a day or two, and I have to check the syllabus again to see if we were going to do protists or we're just going to move on to the animals. I think we were just going to move on to animals. Okay. So listen, if you guys have any questions on anything, please don't be afraid to email me. I sent out the directions for the quiz, how you take the quiz online, which will be available to start taking that on Wednesday. I'll send you out another email reminder tomorrow. And I also have the Zoom instructions. So on Wednesday, I do want to try and do a Zoom office hour. So read through the instructions, wait for me to send you the invitation to those Zoom office hours, and you basically click on it, download the Zoom, and you're in. So, okay, any questions, just let me know. Thanks.